Good evening, everyone. Guys, I'm going to give you a Middle East update. I'm going to try and keep it relatively quick. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know what's happening in the Middle East. And then that's it. I'm just going to leave you there, asking for more probably. But anyway, guys, if you've not done so already, please like, comment, subscribe, click the links below there. I really appreciate it when you do that because it sends me up through the algorithm and it helps the channel grow. So, guys, the situation in the Middle East, there's a lot of politicians talking about, who can do what and we can get a peace deal and we're going to sanction. None of it matters. Guys, the Israelis will do what the Israelis want to do. And we need to understand that. One thing that I find really, some mainstream media commentators have said that the Israeli action in the Middle East, it's kind of making a mockery of the West. Because lots of Western politicians, they're these highly educated people and they're from universities and they've got all the qualifications, but they've never really been in the real world. They don't know how things work. They can sit there and eat grapes or whatever they do and, philosophize about what should be the right thing. But the reality is, what happens and what people think about in a university, trust me, guys, I used to work with Sheffield University. What they do in their lofty grape-eating castles and what actually happens on the ground are far detached, whether that's in industry, in politics, whatever aspect that is, universities, they're very good at creating knowledge. They're not very good at creating products. They're not very good at creating functionality. That's why when you leave a university, you should go and work somewhere first before you get a job in politics, because otherwise you'll just be the lofty grape eater, and lofty grape eaters can't deal with situations in the real world. But anyway, guys, enough of my ranting about lofty grape eaters. I had some grapes earlier, actually. They were really nice. So let me just go. I'll just start with I'll just start. So they're talking about now the locations that Israel may strike back. So for those of you, it seems like a million miles away now, a million years ago, when Iran sent this massive missile attack to Israel, kind of a failure. But then the Israelis, they said, look, we're going to strike back as and when we see it fit. Now, if you remember when Joe Biden came out and he said something like, I don't want you to, or you should think of another target other than the Iranian oil infrastructure. I literally day one, week one, I said, listen, guys, this is a massive target for the Israelis. Not only is it a target for the Israelis because it's going to take out a lot of their energy infrastructure, it's going to take out a lot of their money, basically, its finances. The additional the additional weight to that attack. A lot of these gas oil refineries, these processing plants, they're on the southern coast of Iran. Now, on that southern coast, that is a very heavily armored, there's lots of air defense in and around that area. If there was going to be, and I think there will be, a land invasion of Iran, it has to be done amphibiously. There really isn't any other way to do this. So what better chance right now to take out some of the Iranian air defense, take out some of the Iranian, those facilities, maybe those barracks or those concrete structures, whatever it is on that southern coast. Also, this would be a good test for the F-35s. If, and again, like I think they will do, if the US are planning a ground invasion into Iran, they're going to, obviously, that will be preceded by a huge air campaign. And it would be really good now if the Israelis could test the air defense with their own F-35s, see how it works, see what where their strengths and where their weaknesses are. So I think that could be a highly likely target. I just don't think they're going to try and take out their nuclear facilities. I think the nuclear facilities will be too deep. They'll be too far underground. They will be too protected. And, I see it as a wasted opportunity if they try and take out the nuclear facilities. These gas oil separation plants, the oil refineries, there's another word for it. You go with oil refineries, basically, where you take the crude oil and you take it to a refinery, and then the other end of that you get petrol, diesel, and some other stuff. An additional effect to that, you would get the oil prices just absolutely spiking. That's because that whole region with the Strait of Hormuz, the Iranians controlling that area, if there was a spike in oil prices, they're saying this would fall into Trump's hands, because in the US election, Trump can say, hey, I want peace in the Middle East, but your diplomacy is not working. So Donald Trump's going to have to go in there with the US Marine Corps, and we're going to have to get the price of oil back down, or whatever, and that would feed into that US narrative. I don't think Trump needs this at the moment. I think he's already surging ahead. But, I guess if it's going to help anyone, it would definitely help Donald Trump. Also, there's been a huge drone strike into Israel. If I'll share the screen with you now, guys, and let you see. Where are we? Here we are. So 67 wounded in this drone strike. The number 4 people have been critically wounded, according to reports. Hezbollah has already claimed responsibility for the attack, saying it hit an Israeli military training camp. So this here, they're claiming this is I guess it is northern Israel, but they're striking pretty far down, and you would think that a squadron of drones, which is what is claimed to have carried out this attack, you would think a squadron of drones would have been able to be intercepted, but the fact that it's not says a lot about the Israeli air defense. Now, if Hezbollah can find a chink in the armor and they've managed to get drones through, which they clearly have, I would say this would be a prelude to more attacks, more missile attacks, because when you're looking at these like the Iron Dome, for example, you think about the Iron Dome. I mean, I don't know how much these missiles cost, but I'm pretty sure they're not cheap. So say they're like $100,000 or whatever each, and then they're firing 2 missiles at each projectile. You're now firing what? And again, I don't know what the numbers are, but you're firing like 200 grand's worth of missiles at a cheap drone that's maybe worth a couple of grand at the most. So that's how you do it. You overwhelm the air defenses with the cheap drones. Once the air defenses are overwhelmed, and like you've just seen here, you can manage to get that flurry of drones in, that, you can look at this and say, right, okay, the air defenses are overwhelmed. Let's send the big boys in. And that's when you would look like, a potential larger attack from Iran, from Iraq, from the Houthis. So many people in that region at the moment, unfortunately, who want to strike the Israelis, and the Iranians. It's absolutely insane. So that is what I may or may not be happening in the near future. Then the final thing we're going to talk about is the peacekeepers that are in Lebanon. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu's urging the removal of the UN peacekeepers from Lebanon, and he's claiming that this is Hezbollah using them as like a human shield. It's a very difficult question here to understand what's right and wrong. Obviously, firing missiles at each other is wrong on both sides, but people are complaining about the Israelis doing their Israeli thing. But guys, it's happening. We can point the finger, but we need to understand what's happening now, what's happening next. So I don't think that at some point, I think what's going to happen is the Israelis will say to the UN, they'll say, right, guys, listen, your peacekeeping force, they need to move because we're coming in. Remember, the Israelis have something called, I think it's the Hannibal Doctrine, or the Samson. So I think it's the Hannibal Doctrine. And the Hannibal, it's the Hannibal Doctrine. So the Israeli Hannibal Doctrine is that if Hamas have taken Israeli hostages, the Israelis' Hannibal Doctrine states that, the Israeli military will still go really strong to take those out, and even if they lose some of their own hostages, because they can't afford other hostages to be taken in the future. And when you think about it, it's a brutal way of doing it, but, it's hard to argue with the logic. It's a brutal way of doing things. It really is. But when you come to it's like why you should never negotiate with terrorists. You should never pay for hostages, because as soon as you start doing that, that opens the book up then to other people wanting to do it. You know, so like the Italians may or may not have paid for hostages in Afghanistan. I don't know. I would just speculating, guys. I don't know if this ever happened, but you know, some countries, if they start paying for hostages, then the enemy nations, when they know they can get money from this and these terror groups, they will then go and find, and if they find an Italian, I don't know if this has ever happened before, but if they find Italians and they say, right, are you Italian? And they say, yes. Then they say, right, okay, I know your government will pay me for you. So they take the Italian. Doesn't help the Italian, does it? You know, whereas if they take the Brits, they know that they're going to get guys bursting through the doors with doing different hostage negotiations with that. So, you know, this is kind of why the Israelis have that doctrine. And remember, it's very difficult to point the finger and say anybody's doing anything right or wrong at the moment, because there has been so much stuff happening, you know, so much on, you know, so much like, and people kind of don't understand, and people decontextualize stuff. And when we're watching this stuff on the news, it's kind of like watching a film or something. But you know, each one of these bombs that goes off and each one of these explosions, there's probably people who are at the very least, you know, life-altering injuries. And there's a human cost, there's a human toll to all of this. So when the question is, should the UN peacekeepers move out of Lebanon? On one hand, you know, Hezbollah may or may not be hiding behind the UN peacekeepers, knowing that the Israelis will potentially not attack. On the other hand, you know, the Israelis may say, listen, guys, we've got the Hannibal doctrine. Get your guys out, because we're coming, and whatever happens. So we could, I don't think we're there yet. I think there'd have to be a few more moves. But I think we could come to a stage where the Israelis start attacking the UN peacekeepers. Now, of course, you know, there's been articles in the press where this has happened several times. I don't think this was deliberate as such, in the context that I don't think they've been attacking on purpose UN peacekeeping locations. I think they've tried to, and again, I genuinely don't know. There's a lot of fog of war at the moment, guys. Something will come out on the mainstream. It will then get changed a couple of days later. So right now, the situation is dynamic. I can only speculate on what my opinions are. So it could be the case. Anyway, guys, I'm waffling now. I try to keep this video short. They're the two options that could happen. One, the UN peacekeepers can lift out. Two, the Israelis can say, listen, under the Hannibal doctrine, we're going to continue to prosecute these targets. Then you would have a situation where the Israelis would be attacking UN peacekeepers. Now, I don't know what happens after that. But guys, you know, we're just going to see escalation and escalation until the US election. I think that the Israelis could strike the gas oil processing plants on the south coast. You know, all of hell's about to break loose out there. I think if this is going to go down, it really has to go down this Friday. I think the window of opportunity starts to close after this Friday. Anyway, guys, I'm going to Mac to Grid. I'll get you guys another video later, if I can find out how to switch off this thing. Yes, I will Mac to Grid now.